What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well out there.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what you been playing?
Yeah, I mean, not a surprise. I was on a small vacation, so playing a lot of Steam Deck. It came very in handy. A little big to travel with. That I will give that to anyone who's got theirs and traveling on planes and stuff. It doesn't give you any issues. It's just a little large to keep on, especially if you're doing it with your personal item or carry-on. So a little PSA for that. Just be careful bringing your Steam Deck along out there. But yeah, so I've been playing a lot of that on there, and still just dabbling in a lot of retro games I have not played. Obviously, I have everything set up on my Steam Deck, so it's just been kind of dabbling in and out of stuff. But mainly, it was a good thing for me to kind of kill time. There's this small indie game. I think it's made by a couple dudes called Vampire Survivors or Survivor, which is like a little pixel art bullet hell. It's Castlevania inspired, but it's like a bullet hell game. So it's rounds last anywhere from 5, 10, 20 minutes. Then there's like a hard end where they stop you. So it's kind of one of those podcasts, almost watching TV type games where you just move your character. All the attacks are auto, and you're just kind of moving and dodging enemies. And there's like a little meta game to it where there's like certain abilities you have to get and items, and like there's goals and achievements to do. So it's all there. So again, super cheap game. It's like maybe $2, $3. It's nice on the Steam Deck. It's one of those small indie games that just feels good.
What is it called again? I want to check that out.
Vampire Survivor, or Survivors. I don't remember what it is, but
okay,
Vampire
cool.
Survivors, super cheap. I definitely recommend it.
You said Castlevania. That's all you got to say.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I want to see it.
Yeah, it's super cheap, so it's like it's a super relaxing wind down at the end of the day type game almost. Do a quick session or two. So
Yeah,
super cool. I can recommend that again. $3 or whatever it is. And it's in early access, so they're constantly adding more stages and characters, different items, and they do the different balancing. So it's pretty cool. I can definitely recommend it. I know it had like a big popularity spike because it released, I want to say almost right before this, as the Steam Deck was releasing, so everybody was just like going for it. So it's super cool. The other game, also not just leaving early access, I've been playing Rogue Legacy 2. Also, of course, on the Steam Deck, so I don't know how it runs anywhere else. I don't know if it's available anywhere else yet, because I think we're still technically early access, whatever. I wouldn't say I'm a huge Rogue Legacy fan. These Rogue games, these sort of these kind of Rogue games are mixed bag for me. I go through phases where I'm like really excited to play one a lot. Like I went through like a Binding of Isaac phase, and I was really fun with that. And then you had Returnal and all these games. Rogue Legacy is always the one that was like the first one I played back on RIP the Vita is where I played the first Rogue Legacy. So I thought it was justifiable to play Rogue Legacy 2 on Steam Deck. Again, completely verified and completely optimized on there, and it works really, really well. And I forgot how in depth this goes, where it includes a little bit of not necessarily base building, but the hub town you go back to when you die, because obviously the big gimmick for these games, you die, you choose a new character or knight, and you try again to get as far as you can to unlock things. But I did forget that the sort of, and I don't remember if the first one had it almost like this little hub area first, where you get some more permanent upgrades for your characters and hit a shop up, and there's a way to at least in a sense stash all your coins for the most part, or save them over so you don't completely lose them, because obviously as all these other Rogue games you lose it, or Elden Rings pop, so everybody knows that concept where you lose all your money and if you don't do it correctly. But it's another one of those fun little games. I don't know if it's just because I was sort of on vacation, so in between these segments of doing things with family, I was being able to have bursts of go clear a couple rooms out, die, restart, try a new weapon, a new character, a new ability, and so on and so forth. So again, Rogue Legacy, I grabbed it on a sale a while ago when it was like first relaunching out of early access, I believe. So I'm not sure what it even costs right now. Again, I got it for under $20, which is why I bit the bullet and bought it, but didn't really play it till on the plane. So it was a good time. And the last thing I was playing, and it's not a surprise. I feel like I've said this every year. Obviously, we all know the Sonic 2 movie came out digitally on Paramount Plus, Amazon, everywhere else like that. And not to get too into that movie, but it leaves you wanting a lot of stuff. So I replayed also on my vacation. I replayed Sonic Adventure 2 because it runs great on Steam Deck. It actually looks the best I've ever seen it on Steam Deck without mods. I've seen mods that kind of help, just make it have a different look. But man, what a game! I haven't beaten it completely in a little bit. I know I usually run through one of the sides, like the hero story, the dark story, or just play the finale at least once a year. But this time I did both stories, did the final story. I did a couple extra missions. I've been in the little Chow Garden and working with that, trying to unlock all the little things to just kind of keep it going, because I want that to be now like with the Steam Deck now just being there. I want that to be like my always running save file, because I've started Sonic Adventure 2 on my Xbox, and then so I got 2 Chows there. And I just want like one definitive, here's all my emblems and all my unlocks and everything like that. So again, you and I are huge Sonic Adventure fans. We love those games. They both definitely run. I don't think it's funny. I think both of them say they're unsupported on Steam Deck. They both run perfectly fine on Steam Deck. I was
going to ask, are you playing the Steam version or a ROM?
No, I'm playing the native Steam version.
Oh, okay, cool.
Native Steam version for both. I think Sonic Adventure 2 is like $10, and then you have to do the $3 battle DLC.
The upgrade, yeah.
Cube add-on. Same with Sonic Adventure 1. It's cheap, and then you put a $4 or $5 DLC to get the DX upgrade.
Yeah, I was about to buy those, and I was like, wait, let me hold off, because I'm not sure if they run good, because I didn't want any wonky things, but I was like, you know what, to be honest, they're so old, you would imagine they'd run without a hitch, but...
Yeah. So at least I haven't played too much of Sonic Adventure 1, but I did a couple levels and ran perfectly fine. And then Sonic Adventure 2, like I said, I just ran through all the levels. There's a few times, I'm not sure what it is. I don't remember if it's just the Steam version, because I did hear the Steam version when originally they got Sonic Adventure 2. There was some walking. There are some times when you're playing the Eggman Tails levels where it just feels like it's not moving correctly. So like I'll fall off a platform, and I'm like, I definitely inputted the right stick command. I don't know but it just feels like it'd be for like a second, and the next time I would try I'd be perfectly fine. So it wasn't like game breaking, within the 6 hours that I was able to get everything done. So yeah, that's all I've been playing. I've got some things on my backlog. I'm ready to play. I'm gonna have a little bit more time on my hands now that things in my personal work life are changing, so I'll be able to hopefully I want to do a final push for Elden Ring to at least get to the final boss. I haven't been able to do that, and I do want to return back to Horizon. I know you had taken a step back from Horizon actually, but
I'm going back to it at some point.
Yeah, I gotta go back again. I haven't hit the game. I haven't played the game. I did the first maybe 4 or 5 hours, and then right before you actually get to the Forbidden West, or you do the councils that is going to allow you to go to the Forbidden West. Like, that's right where I'm at, and everyone's telling me, they're like, yeah, you're right before the game actually starts.
It opens up, yeah.
They're like, that's right where the actual game starts. So I don't have to replay the tutorial. I'm ready for that, and I think after I get some things settled down today, I'm going to try to go back to Horizon today. So that's all I've been playing. What have you been up to?
Yeah, ton of Steam Deck for me too, and I could say pretty confidently as of right now. Obviously, it's we're in between major releases right now, so nothing's been coming up. But Steam Deck has definitely become my primary console. I'm playing everything on there for the most part, with small exception. So I kind of bit the bullet, and I finally got GTA 5 on Steam Deck, and I've already played, I think, 12 hours of it or something like that. Like, I've just kind of played a couple hours each day and kind of sat down with it and had fun. And I'm playing through the campaign actually, just because the online mode, there's no cross progression that exists right now for Rockstar games, so I don't want to restart on the online thing after having put from 2013 to now almost 10 years of time into my online character. I'm not going to restart there, but the campaign I haven't played in a while, so I've just been working my way through the campaign. I'm more than halfway through at this point, and I'm just having a great time. It runs fantastically on the Steam Deck. I was actually really impressed by it, because relatively early on, when I kind of actually booted it up for the first time, it was actually really wonky and weird. The default presets of like putting like a decent frame rate and trimming it to the aspect ratio and all that did not set in correctly when I first launched the game. So it was like a weird 4:3 aspect ratio and really low resolution. I was like, what the hell is this? And I was like, oh, I got to refund this. And I was like, wait, let me just go to the settings really quick. Cause again, I'm a console boy, so I'm not used to going into the settings and like configuring things. Like I just haven't had to do it that much. Pretty much performance or quality mode is the extent of where I've had to kind of toggle things before. But going into it, so I was like, okay, let me change the resolution. So I changed it to whatever, like 1080 800 or 1280 800 or something like that, whatever is the high resolution for the screen. And then I adjusted some of the frame rate stuff and all that. And then once it kind of reset and really started playing, it ran phenomenally. And I've actually gotten the settings really, really high. And it's consistently hitting 60 frames per second, 0 hitches in the world, 0 glitches, 0 issues, no audio clipping, no nothing really. No significant frame drops. I've gotten into heavy firefights, been in the dense parts of the cities, no issues, because that game is fantastically optimized for many different SKUs of hardware. And so at this point, short of like actually bumping everything up to ultra, maybe you'll bump into some issues, but I keep it pretty locked at a standard frame rate. And either, I always opt for the 60 frames per second, and then I just put down some of the effects a little bit. So I like turn some of the reflections and the shadow resolutions down all the way, and that keeps things running really great. So I highly recommend for anybody who is looking for that kind of open world, fun GTA experience on the go. GTA 5 on the Steam Deck is about as good as it gets, short of like The Witcher, for example. That's also on there, and same thing with Skyrim. I also got Yakuza 0 and Kiwami really cheaply on Humble Bundle. And that's one thing that now that I'm in the PC space, I'm still trying to get used to like all the different tools I have available to me. Not only the great Steam sales, but Humble Bundle, having really, really cheap games that you can just get the Steam code for and then just redeem it in the store. And so, yeah, I played a little bit of Yakuza, not much, so I can't report a whole bunch, but it runs great. 0 issues, maxed out, no issues. Those aren't incredibly demanding games. They're very cinematic. But for the most part, the games look and run fantastically on Steam Deck, so I highly recommend that. And I think I'm holding Yakuza for when I finish all the stuff I'm working on now, because the one thing is I love Yakuza games, but I have trouble completing them all the way through, just because I tend to get burned out a little bit. Always about like 75% in for every game, I get burned out, just because the length of time that it takes to beat those games versus what I'm actually able to give for each one, they just never sync up. So it's like I forget exactly how long it takes to play, but like it usually takes, let's say between 25 and 30 a game to get through it, pretty comprehensively, and I always get burned out around 15. But that was back when I was playing it on a console sitting at a TV, and I'm thinking with it handheld, that's going to really help me get through these games a lot more efficiently. So Yakuza is probably going to be my next franchise that I try to get through. We'll see if I make it all the way, because these games tend to be a little bit more similar than some of the other franchises I've worked through, like Final Fantasy and stuff like that. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm definitely keeping that on the back burner. I have Kiwami and 0 to go through right now, and then I'll kind of work my way through the other ones. I also got Titanfall, and that was just because it was on sale. I'm loving these Steam sales, and I really wanted to see how like a pretty modern first-person shooter controls on it. And I've played so much Doom that I didn't really want to do Doom, and I saw Titanfall there, and so I went for that. And it's so good on Steam Deck. Looks amazing. It controls great, and that was the big thing for me, is just it needs to feel right, because Titanfall is like 90% gameplay. Like, yeah, it has a solid story, and that's cool, but it's the gameplay that I feel like really differentiates Titanfall. And so I was like, I need this to run phenomenally, or this is just not going to work. And no, I got that frame rate up. I had the little thing in the corner to monitor whether it was dipping or not, and no, it controls great. I'm really, really impressed with what the Steam Deck's actually able to pull off. It's a lot more powerful than I thought it was going to be honest with you. And there was something about it when I booted up Titanfall for the first time, and I was just, shooting around in the world and scaling the walls and stuff like that. I'm like, you know what? This reminds me a lot of the first time I booted up Killzone Liberation on Vita. And at that time, like, obviously you go back to it now, but I think it's actually still pretty impressive for right now. But especially for then, when you booted up that first person, where at the time I'm like, oh my god, this is a like console experience, a console, it's like I'm playing Call of Duty on the go for real. And this is like this closed the gap and has actually realized this. I'm like, oh no, this is actually like my experience of playing Titanfall on PS4 when like it came out. Like this is it. And that's the thing I can say confidently with multiple games, that it's able to fully replicate the experience that I had when it actually released on console not super long ago. Like when I'm playing Witcher on Steam Deck, that is the PS4 experience for me. Actually, in many ways, it's running better because I played it so early that it was clunky when you go to some of that swamp area. But in many ways, yeah, it's that PS4 experience. Like, is it the PS5 experience? Of course not. But it's hitting that console parity that's not that long ago. And I think this is the smallest the gap between handheld gaming and console gaming has ever been historically. So this is awesome for me. Also got Tomb Raider just on sale. Wanted to try it out. This is the first Tomb Raider. And I mean that game is not crazy demanding. The latter ones, Shadow and Rise, are the ones that are, I think, more demanding. So this one runs phenomenally. I like this game a lot. It's been a really long time since I've gone back to it, but I've played through it maybe 2-3 times before because I love that franchise. And so eventually I might work my way through Tomb Raider, but that's something I just kind of got to fire up. And to kind of end off my Steam Deck playing, I've also finally gotten emulation working. For some reason, the kind of unified UI to have all of them launch into, for some reason, was just giving me some issue. The RetroArch engine was just giving me some issues. So I wanted to try launching some of the ROMs just like straight out of the file into a emulator without the kind of unified UI between them all, and they're all running great. So I've been playing a lot of Wave Race. I like that game a lot on N64. I've been playing Castlevania. I think it's like Legacy of Darkness. It's the other one. It's not Castlevania 64. There's 2 games on there.
The second one, yeah.
Yeah, and I have the first one on cart, so I've played a decent amount of that. The second one I haven't played. I mean, it's not great, but it's fun to be able to play that finally, because a lot of these games are insanely expensive. So to be able to have a easy way to play them is awesome. And then also I've been playing a lot of NES games that I haven't been able to play either in a long time or I don't have the cart for anymore or whatever. One of them is Fist of the North Star, based on the anime. Really, I mean, fun. It has it's like kind of ridiculously easy at times, and it has a super broken jumping mechanism where the jump is just so excessive that when you can clear entire sections of the map by jumping. Like, it's so ridiculous. But overall, really fun game. And then also I was playing like a Captain America game for 30 minutes straight. Just, I don't know, throwing my shield around, going crazy. It's not great, but it's a fun platformer. And so, yeah, it's been fun going back to those games. And then lastly, the last thing I've been playing, and I don't really know why 100%, other than I know other people playing it. I went back to Fortnite. I played maybe multiple hours yesterday. Just because I heard, we report about the no build modes. And so I wanted to give it a try, and yeah, I love it without the building, to be honest with you. And there's so much they've added since this, so it's like almost a completely different game in many ways. Same, loop, but overall, there's tanks now, and there's helicopters, and Doctor Strange is around, and people are dancing to actual rap songs in the game. So I'm like, this is craziness. But I find it very entertaining. I actually have my Xbox One in my office. And so while my girlfriend's in the living room playing the PS5, I just play with her, but I play in my office on the Xbox One since there's crossplay. And yeah, it's a fine experience. And yeah, it's not the highest resolution thing in the world, but with the monitor right there, it closes the gap. It's fine. I'm actually playing way better on the monitor than I ever played on the TV, because it's so much closer. So
closer, smaller screen.
Yeah, so I'm just running through people, which is very uncharacteristic for when I play Fortnite. And it helps that when you have a shootout with somebody, they're not building a skyscraper every 5 seconds when you're trying to kill them. So yeah, no, I'm having a really good time with it, and I'm probably gonna stick by it. I've been unlocking little skins and stuff like that related, because I have the battle pass just because I had V-Bucks in there from just playing. And so long as I'm able to kind of keep unlocking things without putting in real money, I could see it being a little, fun thing to do at nighttime and force me to be a little bit more social, because I play nothing but single player games. So yeah, overall, having a good time with Fortnite, and I'll stick by it for a little bit. We'll see. I wish I could play it on Steam Deck, but as many of you probably know, there are anti-cheat things that a lot of games have. especially in the PC space, that kind of prohibit it from working. Prohibit some games from working on Steam Deck, and I guess Fortnite is just one of those games that like there's no real way to play on Steam Deck right now, I don't think, and they've even released a statement about that basically that's why it's not running. So maybe it's something they'll fix at some point, but I don't think anybody's gotten it running on Steam Deck yet, and if they have, I haven't seen it yet. But have you tried, Steve?
So the issue with Fortnite, because the only way to get Fortnite on PC, you have to use the Epic Games. Because obviously it's Epic Games. So I have not tried it, just because it's weird, because I do have the loophole installed to play Epic Games.
Yeah, me too.
That's how I was able to play my Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I got running good. I forgot to kind of mention it, but I've been playing the Evil Dead game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, and that is on, no, I think that was exclusive Epic, so I had to. So I got it on my PC, so, again, the Epic account's universal, so I was able to backdoor it. The only reason I didn't try Fortnite is because when you do the Epic Games trick, the way to get that running, you can't choose where you install a game, so eventually it's going to fill your memory up without being able to choose the SD card, I think, at least, unless I haven't figured that out. Because that's
I know
why,
what you're talking about.
Yeah, because it will only, because it's technically installing through the backdoor to your PC mode.
Yeah, there's a way around that. I can talk to you after.
I'm sure there's a way around it. At the same time, I was like, is it really worth it for Fortnite? Because I heard, I've seen gameplay of it, and it doesn't run that well.
Oh, okay.
It does run into issues. I'm not sure if it's because the anti-cheat. I'm not sure if just because of how much that is server-based. Again, the games I've been playing through Epic Games on Steam Deck have all been mainly single-player games. Even the Evil Dead game, I don't launch the multiplayer mode. I just launched there's a bot mode. There's an AI mode. So I play technically offline mode. Because the game, I don't even remember, there was a game I tried playing. And anytime it was trying to reach a server, it would constantly crash. So I hear that's an issue where it's very laggy, it's very janky. I'm not sure if they're gonna do a workaround that. I don't know. In a perfect world, Epic and Steam would kind of work with each other, so the Epic is an actual app in Steam. I doubt it, because they're technically the only competitors on PC. No one's. I'm not trying to install Origin or the all these other nonsensical launchers on my Steam Deck. But that's all I know. I'd like to have it on there, but at the same time, I'm not gonna cry over it. But it's funny that you bring up Fortnite, because ever since that no build mode, I tried it when it came out, and I was super interested in it, but it was like in the middle of the season. So I was like, I'm not going to get the Battle Pass. I don't have any V-Bucks in there. And I'm not one of the VIP membership things. But I think this week, the new season starts.
June 3rd,
so I'm going to try to jump in at the beginning of that. See what's available. Because apparently it's supposed to have like a lot of Star Wars themed things. Like the big thing for this one was Doctor Strange. I think the next one's supposed to be Vader. It's supposed to be like the big deal.
Oh, okay.
I know they're doing all the... Obi-Wan Kenobi is out right now, I think, you have to buy him. So they're doing that. They brought a bunch of the Star Wars packs back, so I think it's leading into even more Marvel and more Star Wars stuff. So I'm going to check it out. I just can't. If it's sweet pack, then I'll do it. Because, not having build mode, just it being a sandbox shooter just is
much better.
It's what I've always wanted Fortnite to be, so that's great. So we can get into the stories. I know we have this one's a kind of a hefty one to unpack, but a lot of more information than anything. So Sony had a recent investors briefing. So they had a couple major things. So Sony recently held an investors briefing. Here's some of the bigger things that was announced. I'm sure they went through a lot of numbers, a lot of tech, a lot of little things, but what pertains to us mainly are some of these bigger ones. So the PlayStation VR is to launch with more than 20 major first and third party titles, which is a huge thing for PSVR. One of the things that we kind of saw with PSVR 1 is just the immediate drop off from like huge third party and first party titles. Don't get me wrong, the indie guys and all that, they have the weird One Piece VR game, Beat Saber. All these guys were able to really keep it going. I know we had the Astrobot games, but this is good to see that we're getting some. They're treating this as a bigger project. As like we have Horizon VR coming, so that's something we just didn't really expect or see on PSVR 1. So that'll be really interesting to see. No sort of tease as to what it is or who's working on it. There more investment into new IPs than before. That makes a lot of sense too, because just in general with what we want Sony to do is to keep creating new IPs. They have 2 live service games planned to drop in the fiscal year of 2022. Again, we know that they have some I think it was like 10 live service games that they're going to be trying to go over the next couple of years launching. Now, I think it's obvious. We all know they don't want these all. I mean, they would, in a perfect world, all 10 of these live service games would succeed. I'm sure they're just hoping a few of them stick so they can really go for it. My only guess on one of these live service games, even maybe one of these 2 to be launched, is I guess technically the unconfirmed mystery that is The Last of Us 2 multiplayer.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Everyone calls it Factions 2 or whatever it will be. Who knows? Again, there's been talks and leaks of the Last of Us remake, so people are thinking maybe packing with that. Who knows what? That's my quick thought about it. And aggressive growth plans for mobile and PC. So they talked about how first they talked about the numbers. Horizon Zero Dawn doing about 2.4 million on PC as of March 2022. Days Gone did 152K. God of War 971K. So they're talking about how they're going to almost double down on the PC releases, and I again, a lot of technical and business talk. What a lot of people have been speculating and seeing, and all these, people on Twitter and influencers and people in the know talk about how they're maybe even closing the gap and choosing titles differently. They did. I don't think they confirmed it, but I think it was like on Steam's backdoor site, or one of the in a different region. I think Returnal popped up, and and if I'm not wrong, Returnal was in the Nvidia leak, so that GeForce leak. So that's more than that list is gospel by now, because almost
it's like everything like on there.
80% of what was on that leak came true. So looks like Returnal's gonna be the next game, and it makes sense. In a sense, because that game sold what it's going to sell on PS5, I believe, just because of the type of game it is.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. Before we go to the last point, what were your thoughts on some of these announcements?
Yeah, so to start real quick about the VR thing, I just admire the fact that they are still to some degree invested in making that happen. In many ways, the VR craze had its spike, and then it calms down a little bit, and then I'm sure it'll spike again, and then it calms down again, and it kind of takes a real determined force to kind of wade through that and support it either way. So 20 plus, that sounds good. I always hope about it's cool to have a ton up front, but I just hope that there's that steady stream for a couple years afterwards. I think that's the really important thing, is the fact that like when people are going to buy in, that what happens up front isn't the extent of everything that's going to be happening from a first party perspective, just because I think it's important to have those things. So if they can kind of keep something in the back burner at all times in development for PSVR, to always have something on the horizon coming, I think that's going to, no pun intended, I think that's going to be a great thing for them. So I'm really excited to see what that looks like, and then what those major first party releases are and those third party releases at launch are, and just kind of what the trajectory looks like for this, just because VR is in a very different space than when it came out initially, and it's not in a worse space necessarily. Like, you got a lot of people. The benefit is with PSVR 2 coming out is that they already have 1 million plus people who had the VR 1, so there's that many more customers of people who have experience with VR that weren't around the first time, and there's that going them for but the I would say the kind of external hype for it has come down a little bit. So in many ways, the people that are in, and then maybe they need to do a little bit more work to get even more people in. But I'm excited to see what they do with VR2 once it's out, to see how they kind of iterate on the experience that they established the first time. And then, the other points with investment in new IPs, of course, live service games are an inevitability. I'm curious to see what IPs they tap for those live service games. Like, are they going to be new IPs, or are they going to be all established stuff? So obviously, yeah, I'm fully on board with you. I think to some degree it's going to be one of them is going to be definitely whatever Naughty Dog has done. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of them is going to be something that Bungie is working on as well, with their relationship with PlayStation Now. I think it's a good chance that something in the form of exclusive Destiny expansion or something like that is going to probably happen in the PlayStation ecosystem, and that they might consider that to be an internally developed thing now that that relationship exists. And then the PC thing, I think, is actually really good news. And call me biased, but now that I'm in the Steam Deck world, the PlayStation on Steam Deck thing is like my ideal, because like I love my PlayStation, but some of these games I would love to have on the go. Like, man, if Forbidden West was on Steam Deck, that would solve every problem I have with it. Because again, at times it tends to be a little bit not grindy, but it's definitely a defined loop that takes a lot of time to get through. And so if I could just chill in bed and kind of mess around in that world and hunt and grab materials and stuff like that, that would be perfect. But I'm really glad to see that these PC releases are doing good, and I hope that they keep up with it and add. There's definitely different things that if came to PC, I'd love to give a shot. Again, Last of Us I don't think is on PC at all. So if they added Last of Us Part 2 on PC, that would be really cool. Ghost of Tsushima still not on PC. And then I would love to see that gap between new releases and Ratchet and Clank I would love to see on PC as well. And I would love to see that gap between like PlayStation release and then PC release get a little smaller as well, so they don't have to just tap really old games, but also maybe have that like 6-month window or something like that. And I don't expect them to have day and date, because they're not Microsoft, but I would love to see that gap close a little bit more, because seeing stuff like Death Stranding on the Steam page and stuff like that, I think that's really cool stuff, and I don't think they have much to lose. And I think for a long time they had a really skewed perspective of what PC sales would do to PlayStation sales, which everybody but them seem to understand that, like, bruh, the PC ecosystem is a PC ecosystem, and you're not losing PlayStation sales by offering. You're just walking away from money, basically. And so, yeah, I'm glad to see that these are doing well, and I hope that they all can crack 1 million so they can feel a lot more comfortable continuing this. But judging by this investor briefing, it sounds like they're very much still invested in the PC space, and that whatever internal metrics that they had at one point seems to have been met, which is good. So, yeah, no, I'm really happy with what they've announced so far.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and people were like a little shocked that Horizon's a little bit more, but you gotta remember Horizon was, I think, the first.
Yeah, of the PC ones, yeah.
Of the PC ones, so I mean, you had tons of people buying it just to see a PlayStation game on PC, I think, and yeah, God of War was the last of these, and it does make it makes sense that it sold more than Days Gone, but so but it is, even now that I've played these games to death almost at this point. And when I see them on Steam Deck, like over vacation, I saw Horizon Zero Dawn on sale for like $20 or whatever, and like I put it in my cart at one point, and then I was like, I haven't even played this.
Yeah.
I just replayed Zero Dawn. I finished my replay of Zero Dawn like right before Forbidden West came out, and I almost just threw $25 more at Sony's, and that's the power of having multiple things. And now that helps because of the Steam Deck, obviously, but it is one of those things. I have a friend who doesn't have a Steam Deck, and he rebuys, just because he has an ultra wide monitor, rebuys every PlayStation game. He rebought Death Stranding, he rebought God of War. I think he may have skipped Days Gone, and he bought Horizon because he wanted to play it in wide mode for maybe a couple hours, and that's it. So you never know. But the last thing that on topic that they were discussed in these meetings. It was also confirmed that 3 major PlayStation franchises are getting TV adaptations, with Horizon going to Netflix, God of War officially going to Amazon, and Gran Turismo to a currently unannounced platform or network. Now, this is also continuing this sort of thing that Sony's been doing with their IPs going to television and movies. We had Uncharted with Tom Holland go out. You know, we have that weird Twisted Metal thing with Anthony Mackie percolating somewhere. I don't even remember who's getting that. I think Peacock is getting that, or some weird company is getting that. I don't remember in the streaming world who's going where. God of War was rumored to go to Amazon a while back, so we kind of knew that one was coming. The other two, the Horizon one makes a lot of sense. Sony, I think, is doing the wrong move and really pushing Horizon to be this big universe now. I think we're gonna get a little bit of Horizon, almost like burnt out on Horizon now. I don't know where they're going with that. And the big thing for Horizon, I've always thought now again, we don't know if it's gonna be a true adaptation of the first one, if they're gonna go side story spin-off, completely its own thing. The world of Horizon is very interesting. For them to go get an actress to play Aloy, it'd be weird. It'd be weird because the story, as interesting as it can be, it's almost not the focal point of the game. It's almost like everything else. You know, same with God of War and stuff like that. It's like, how do you translate some of these core mechanics in the game into a movie or show? Now, I'm glad they're at least TV adaptations, because now we're at least going multi-episodes, less crunch and then like crunching everything into one little single 2-hour experience. I'm for that. The big outlier here, though, Gran Turismo. Let me tell you, we both played Gran Turismo 7. I saved you from that bullet, with the free copy. And the little story mode that's in Gran Turismo 7 is, I mean, it's cheeks. It's garbage. I don't know how you do a Gran Turismo storyline. It's one of those franchises, like, I just don't get it. I don't get it. But who knows? I mean, there's a lot of car heads out there that will just absolutely fall in love with anything car related. So we'll have to see. But what did you think of this guy? I mean, I know we're both not huge fans of the IPs going to live action, but it's gonna keep going on. You know, I didn't want to sit through those 9 episodes of Halo, but I did it terribly, and I cried. But you know, it is what it is. So what do you think?
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Halo, because that's what I was immediately thinking of. And it's like, I try to keep an open mind to these things, because I know that the translation to live action format is not really my cup of tea, especially after, like, I saw, like, what Castlevania did, for example. That was kind of my, like, okay, that these more fantastical video game things, this is the means in which they should be adapted. But, you know, even though we haven't seen it yet, everything that's kind of come out and all the behind the scenes footage and leaks and stuff like that from, like, Last of Us, actually, from, I think that's an HBO show, is looking correct, and it looks like they're actually trying to do something special there. And so I can appreciate what Last of Us is doing. And so part of me, when I read this story, I was like, okay, so maybe it's going to be more of that. But then I can't help but in the background have that Halo thing in my head. And it's like, God, I don't want you guys to Halo God of War. And Gran Turismo, I can't even begin to conceptualize what that could even be about. I don't know. Like, just driving around in circles in nice European environments, I guess. I don't know. Horizon has an incredible world that I think is fraught with lots of different story opportunities. I just don't know what they're gonna do with that. Like, are they really telling Aloy's story, and how does that look? And that one, I think, makes that's what I can visualize the most of them doing a show about. Is just I don't think that's too crazy a stretch. God of War is a little tricky for me, because I don't know what era they're talking about. God of War means different things to different people at different times. So, you know, because of where we're at right now with the story, when people say God of War to Amazon, I think everybody went to Norse era God of War, which is awesome. I love that era. But they kind of forget that there's like 3 games before, no, more than 3 games actually, but 3, you know, mainline games before that point that don't take place in those environments. That the vibe of those games are profoundly different, and I don't know would translate to a show in 2022 great, to be honest with you. Yeah, they're very over the top and edgy and campy and bloody and very sexual. Like, it's just very 2007. Like, I can't see how they can adapt that era of God of War without it immediately feeling like 300. You know what I mean? So, you know, I'm curious to see what they do with God of War. again, for me, it's entirely dependent on like what era they're trying to do. But God of War is tricky because it's a very, though you have people with you, it is a very somber experience. These newest games, the 2018 game, is a very kind of, it's solitary in the way that, you know, it's just you and your son and sometimes that head dude. And you guys are on this journey, but it's not like you have this expansive cast of characters and moving plot lines. It's just, it's a very kind of like linear narrative that goes in very dark places. And I'm curious to see how that would be structured in a show, because, you know, it's very much an immersive game experience that I don't know how you make into, you know, let's say a 6-episode show, you know, 6 hours of content. How do you adapt something like that? Like, you know, it has its big fighting moments, but overall it's that journey. It's that the climbing, it's the traversing these crazy environments, encountering these crazy enemies. That I'm just, and again, they have to get that action right, that kinetic kind of connected action, the momentum of him throwing that axe out and then recalling it back. Like these need the budgets. So that's why when they said Amazon, I'm like, okay, that's cool. HBO, okay. Netflix, I start getting nervous. I won't lie to you. And not that Netflix doesn't do great work, but the money in which they put in terms of their internally created things versus things that they either partner with or acquire, there's a massive discrepancy on. And so you would imagine that with them working with Sony, that they're going to cut the check. But I just hope that they gotta get the budget for Horizon, because otherwise this is going to start feeling very Stargate, very, you know, early 2000s sci-fi show. Like, it can get really bad. And I just hope that it's definitely more of the HBO Last of Us route, which is what I think they're going to be doing. Again, that's still speculative. That could still be trash. And less so the Halo route. But I'm going to keep positive about it. I'm going to try my best, because this is obviously a trend that PlayStation's very invested in. And they're not the only ones. Nintendo's trying to stray into the movie thing. Yeah. Obviously, with Halo, you know, Microsoft has an interest too. So this adapting into live action thing, which is something I would have thought we would have left behind by now after the whole live action Doom, Resident Evil era, Street Fighter era, Mortal Kombat.
Mario Brothers.
Yeah, all of that nonsense. I thought we would have left this behind by now. But they still very much seem like, no, we want to do the live action thing. We messed that up. We want to do it right this time. All right, go ahead, try, but it's not really my thing. I don't think these properties need to be adapted. I think they're great as is, and I don't really see what they stand to gain from having that kind of show format, but I'm going to keep an open mind for it.
Yeah, you know, and I agree with you every point you made. It's just like these are the experiences that we didn't, in a world that doesn't make sense coming to be recreated as a TV show. You know, The Last of Us is always one where it's like, man, if there was going to be one to come to a live-action TV series, it would be The Last of Us, you know, character-driven. There's some of those moments I can see being recreated. But yeah, I mean, Gran Turismo, no idea. But the God of War one's a huge one where it's like, a lot of that was those small... Are you just going to have episodes of... and again, this is where it comes from. Like, you really can't do the God of War Norse reboot, because it does rely on what happened in the first 3 games.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you're going to do those games, which you kind of would have to, that Kratos, I've always said, is a really bad character. He's just a very angry man. No context. I mean, there's context, but there's no characteristics. There is no liking Kratos. You played those games because of the action and the blood and the Greek mythology. That was it. Kratos wasn't a compelling character. This character that you wanted to... You know, he wasn't this deep character that you were going to see grow. He doesn't grow through those games. He's the same guy from the beginning to end in that trilogy. You know, that's my hot take. He's the same guy until he does what he does in the ending of 3, which leads into the new Kratos we have in that reboot. So it's like, it's weird because it's like you can't skip to, though it's God of War, that's God of War 4 technically is the God of War 2018. So it's like you can't skip to the 4th chapter.
Exactly.
You know, a lot of those big scenes that happened in God of War 2018 were throwbacks to the original trilogy, through characters, weapons, story beats, what part of Kratos was brought over to Atreus, physically and spiritually, all come from the original trilogy. So it is a weird choice. So we'll have to, unfortunately, I wait and see. And the big one for me also, though, is like Horizon is such a big one, and that going to Netflix. Netflix is in a slightly struggling position. I mean, they just went and canceled so many things, so many projects that people were excited for. A lot of animation projects. They've also been very tight. They're the ones who like to have their favorites, right? I'm watching the new season of Stranger Things. The budget's very high, except for the wigs. The budget's very high on that show. All the animation, the CG looks really great. But then I've seen other Netflix shows that look like just bad and almost CW quality. Think of the CW Flash universe that exists, where some of the CG is really bad. So it's like you don't know what you're gonna get, and they're not gonna all hit, but it's gonna be here whether we want it or not. So
yeah, and you raised a great point, and then that's kind of what I was getting about like the Kratos and the lack of characterization. That's what I meant when like it's very much like that 2005 to 2008 Dude Bros smash everything thing that like many franchises fell into. Even Resident Evil had its own little era of that, and so that's what I mean. Where it's like that doesn't you could re-release that game as a video game, and I feel like that would barely work in 2022, let alone a show about a guy where it's like there's no progression there. It's just kill until there's nothing left, which is fun for, I think, a particular demographic that doesn't mind that kind of mindless smash, kill, action, get the women, just kill everybody else like that. That has its community, I'm sure, who would love something like that. But overall, I don't see that resonating with a lot of people, especially the people who jumped in on 2018, which I think a lot of people downplay and don't fully understand how many people jumped in at 2018. So their understanding of Kratos is a fundamentally different person. We're talking about a deeply distressed, challenged older man who's a father, who's trying to leave the sins of the past back then and is getting dragged back into something reluctantly, as opposed to a guy on this kind of rageful journey who is literally, his goal is to kill everything. That's it. I want to kill them all. I want to kill all the gods. That's it. I want to kill them all. Where, in like God of War 2018, his motivations are a lot different. He's burying his wife. He's dealing with his son. He's in this strange land. He's getting challenged by these people. He's trying to keep this rage within him controlled because he doesn't necessarily love what he was beforehand. And not that he's reformed per se, but he's tried to move on with his life the best he could, start a family, live a quiet life, and he's gotten dragged back in and had to pull at the worst parts of himself to kind of free himself from this affliction that he's in right now. That's a way different journey that I think is incredibly compelling. And if they're going to go back to those days, I feel like you almost have to fundamentally rewrite what they did in the original trilogy, which I think is going to piss off a lot of people. I would love it because I think the original trilogy, as fun as those games were, don't translate into a compelling story. Sorry, I call that a hot take. I apologize for all the old God of War fans. I don't think that they have that compelling of a story. But I think they would have to rewrite it to make it work, and I think that's going to drive people nuts. But, we'll see. It's probably very far off. There's probably going to be a number of years before this is even touching a screen, but we'll see. We'll start getting casting choices and writers, and hopefully they bring on some of the original people from the God of War team to work on that show as well. I like it when they bring the developers on to have that guiding force. Like Once Upon a Time, Neil Druckmann was on the Last of Us show. I don't think he is anymore working on it, but at least he was there guiding those kind of early days for it. So,
Exactly.
All right, so we got our second story. This is our last story, but this is going to be an interesting one. So based on that same investor briefing, we got an interesting look at what Sony is viewing as the end of the PS4 cycle. So at the latest Sony investor presentation, Sony revealed that it plans to be done with PS4 games by 2025. And now that we have the first official date for the end of the PS4 gen, I thought it would be a good time if we can kind of take a final look back at the PS4. And we've talked about it a lot before, but now that we kind of have that concrete timeline. For the most part, we've had all the PS4 games that are going to come out. That's it. There's probably going to be one or two more games that maybe major games that also have a PS4 SKU. But overall, PS4 games have finished. We're done. And I personally consider the end of the PS4 era to really be The Last of Us 2 and Ghost of Tsushima. Now, Miles came out after that, and to me, that's like the transitionary period. There is a transitionary period where we're still getting PS4 games. Miles is on PS4 and all that. Elden Ring is still playable on PS4 and all that. But for the most part, I consider that to be the kind of clean end of where Sony was no longer solely focused on PS4 and had shifted onto PS5 at that point. And so looking back on this generation, I think it is understated how important this was for Sony to get right after the PS3. And the fact that they not only course corrected, but course corrected so effectively and so efficiently that they've not only released some of the best games that they ever released, established one of the most powerful first-party stables that exist in gaming right now, put together a solid piece of hardware that, instead of the cell architecture, we have a piece of hardware that was x86, that was in line with everything else that was happening in the industry at the time. The third-party relationships were there. The first-party relationships were there. Solid indie support. And you got the years out of it. That's another thing, is that, it lasted a long time, from 2013 to what? When was Ghost of... we're talking, 2019, 2020, actually? So almost a 7 to 8 year cycle of a console that I think really held its own up to the very end. The end of the PS3 generation got a little rough because things were not running well at the end there. And there's stuff like The Last of Us that kind of held it together. But at the end of the PS3 gen, we were desperate for that new hardware. But the fact that Ghost of Tsushima even ran on the PS4, the fact that Death Stranding even ran on the PS4 was incredible. And so that's a shout out to the stable of talent that they happened there. But what are your thoughts on the PS4 generation kind of looking back now that we've kind of capped it off completely?
Yeah, so we talked a while back. I don't remember when we talked about it.
Yeah, retrospective.
You good?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we talked a while back on favorite generation, stuff like that, and I think I ended up choosing the PS3 at the time. And from what I remember, everything I said about that is what I feel was refined in the PS4 generation. The PS4 generation, fixed a lot of problems from high up to all the way down. We had a time where Sony was just snapping games out like crazy. You think about when they did the Sony All-Stars, whatever it was called, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
Oh, yeah.
That back-to-back with Twisted Metal, back-to-back with Starhawk, back-to-back. There was a time where they were let's just flood the world with all these games and all our IPs. They went ahead and released, I think, ended up killing it. I think it was SOCOM released right before, or during the PlayStation outage. So you couldn't play that game online.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Giving tons of money into, if you remember MAG,
yeah.
There was just... It was over fluctuated, right? And
Rough
then
time.
we saw Sony with the PS4 slow down their release, but also worked on their partnerships, and that's what it is that I think really helped the PS4, where they said, where it almost seemed like they're like, listen, we were almost the enemy on the previous gen because of how hard our hardware was to develop games for. It's why BioShock 1 was originally a Xbox exclusive, and Mass Effect 1 was an Xbox exclusive. Now that had other contracts as well, but it took a long time for those games to come to PS3. We didn't get Mass Effect 1 on PS3 till the Mass Effect trilogy was re-released on PS3, so it's insane to think about. And some of that, now we know a lot of that was because of the processing, and that's why look what we're doing for backwards compatibility, because of what their decisions were. So the fact that they started to almost do what Nintendo did, where they were like, our IP is very valuable. We don't need to be snapping these games so quickly. We don't need to rush and compete with what everyone else is doing. We have to do what we do very well. Now, people like to slam on them for that, third person over the shoulder, action game. Microsoft is killing themselves to try to get one of those things. They're trying to do that with Perfect Dark, and they really were trying to push Gears to become that. And then they got some blowback, so they went back and regressed. Halo's in a weird spot. So where you see everyone else doing their own thing, right? You know, you had Xbox have to force themselves to do services with Game Pass. You had, you know, Nintendo's in its own realm, but they had to basically fuse their two pillars, which were, you know, handheld and console. They had to fuse it together, and Sony was able to really, with the PS4, flourish. Now, again, that had to do a little bit with their competitors, you know, just completely botching it. Nintendo botched the Wii U. Xbox really
I was going to mention that. Yeah,
the Xbox One launch. So that gave them the room to really just flourish. Like, here's our $100 cheaper console from the launch, but the games are just incredible experiences. Now, I've played some fun games on Xbox One. You know, it is what it is. A lot of backwards compatibility is what really helped it. But when you think about the experiences that was Death Stranding, a game that everybody was just really just farting on because, oh, it's a walking simulator. And that's one of the games that, it's one of my favorite games of all time. And it's wild. And, you know, it pulls on different aspects of life. You know, and I can't sit here and tell you, you know, that the Halo Infinite made me feel something. It made me feel as a, you know, Master Chief just beating things up for no reason, really, with very little story. But I was invested the whole time when I was playing Death Stranding. I remember when you were playing it, you were very iffy on it too. You got it on a really good sale, I think, and then I remember you telling me, like, "Yo, this game is
crazy,
something else."
Yeah,
and that's something that always sticks with me during these the PS4 game era. Is that they were something else. Every time it was something else. Experiencing The Last of Us 2 was something else. It was, that was during a pandemic and the world was something else. It was
our lives were something else.
It was a little too close to home, seeing what a pandemic could have and a virus outbreak could do.
Yeah.
But it was something else seeing those characters struggle through what is for them a daily life, and that's the stuff that, you know, as many shots as people take at Sony is something that I wish I could get on an Xbox game. I wish I was playing an Xbox game where I put the control down. I'm like, I need a minute, because that's what I was doing during, you know, The Last of Us, both games, but, you know, specifically Last of Us 2. But it's also not afraid to be a game. You know, they weren't afraid to make a game for a game. Ghost of Tsushima is a super really good game. You know, was my favorite game of that year. I liked it more than The Last of Us. Now, The Last of Us obviously pulled, you know, character story was different, but Ghost of Tsushima was from beginning to end a full game. You know, they weren't afraid to take the creative differences of the timing and the armors and stuff. They wanted to make a really fun, awesome game, and they succeeded in that in many, many ways. That game is, you know, I consider better than The Last of Us. You know, so that's where I think the PS4 really showed what, if anything, it really showed what each staple first party could do. You know, Insomniac was killing it on PS4, and the whole time they weren't even first party. You know, it's insane to think of that. To think a Spider-Man game from a first party PS4 Spider-Man game. You think the two Amazing Spider-Man games. You think all these little, you know, movie titles and all these things. But now you have, again, it's hands down my favorite Spider-Man game. And even more if you include Miles in that same packaging. To think that the PS4 just showed that gaming can continue and continue to evolve. And, you know, we've been playing games our whole lives. Now, you know, we're in our late 20s here. And it doesn't feel like, oh, we're wasting our time playing these old games anymore. But it's like, no, these are artwork. It showed that games can be artwork. And the competitors have done that too, to an extent, but I don't think anyone did it more than Sony with the PS4 generation. That these are masterpieces, these are artworks, and these are things to be taken way more seriously than even they are sometimes now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was gonna say the one thing that was like interesting about the PS4 is just like, and you mentioned it briefly about like the Xbox and Nintendo thing, is that like coming out of the PS3 and seeing what the competitors ended up, because the Wii came out in 2012, so they beat them out by, I don't know if it was a full year, but it was almost like a whole year. And then Sony coming out of there and seeing Xbox having so much issues with the Kinect and the pricing and the lack of first party and all that, where like all signs were pointed towards like this is done, this is screwed, and the fact that they didn't fumble the bag at really any point. Now, was it a perfect generation? Of course not. Like, Sony could have did a lot better when it came to backwards compatibility and stuff like that. They pretty much abandoned a lot of the old generations. They eventually had the whole PS2 on PS4 thing, which was cool, and they had some really good games there. But yeah, no, they could have did a much better job with that, honestly. And it looks, and just now, effectively, they're rectifying that. But overall, I would say kind of on the other fronts, they hit it. And the other thing I was thinking was kind of as a summary of all this is that for many, many people, this is going to be their favorite PlayStation generation ever. And, you know, you and I are both older gamers. We're retro gamers. We play a lot of the older stuff. I've played every PlayStation console up until the 5 here. And I would have a hard time disagreeing with them saying that this is the best. You know, like, obviously I love the PlayStation 1. I love the PlayStation 2. The 3, I mean, I think it's well documented. I'm not the biggest fan of. That was a generation that, like, and hey, this has come from somebody. I didn't have a 360. I had a PS3, so I was there during those days. And I damn near stopped playing games because of that thing. But it was a rough time for me. I didn't love it. But you know, just looking back, it's just like you'd be hard pressed to find a more kind of effective across the board, but between the third parties, the first parties, and the indies that did better than the PS4 generation. You know what I mean? I think there's other generations that had better output in terms of maybe specific genres. So I could totally get like, hey, if you're an RPG fan, it's pretty hard to beat the PS1 and even the PS2. It's going to be tough to do that because, I mean, that Square run, that, you know, Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 on there is something different. Or if you're into like kind of RPGs on the PS2 era, that kind of like Final Fantasy 10, 12, Kingdom Hearts, that run, that was crazy too. Dragon Quest. And that's not even from the first party. That I'm just talking third parties here. And so I can totally understand why they'd be more partial to that generation. But the PS4, I mean, is probably, in my opinion, the most well-rounded generation that I've seen from Sony, where kind of all the cylinders were firing at the same time. Towards the end there, we've heard from multiple developers that maybe they could have did a better job with the indies and supporting them. And I think they can still do much better these days about that. But I would say overall, you know, I was really impressed with what they did, and that perfectly set them up for the PlayStation 5, which, as great as the PlayStation 5 is, which I love, I think they are hampered obviously by the just the hardware limitations in terms of actually getting units in people's hands. It's just a production issue. But the console itself, they perfectly put themselves in a position to succeed. And, you know, in many ways, the PS5, which I think is going to be an immensely successful console when it's all said and done, has the PS4 to thank for that, because the PS4 was a generation where they finally got that first party stable to where they are now. It's where they figured out that they really transitioned from that quantity to quality approach, from the PS3 to the PS4 generation, which is like, we're gonna focus on quality. And the cool thing is they focused on quality so efficiently that they were actually able to get the quantity back up. So they got to the point where they were outputting almost 3, sometimes 4 major first-party releases a year that were all scoring incredibly high. So that's a testament to how, like, if you focus on quality enough, you can fine-tune your processes to the point where you can actually hit both. But you can't focus on the quantity. You focus on the quality first, and the quantity will come almost. And we've seen the same thing actually from Nintendo as well, where they focused on the quality. They didn't worry too much about how many they can get out, and they ended up getting into a crazy good rhythm from like 2017 to 2019 on the Switch. And so I got to give a shout out to the Sony, where I think when it's all said and done and a lot of years pass and more generations come to pass, I think the PS4 generation is going to be looked at very uniquely as the one that kind of cemented PlayStation as an industry leader. And there'll be points where, maybe in the future there'll be a point where Xbox outsells Sony, or that Nintendo outsells both of them. That very well, I'm not going to even say it might happen. It probably will happen. That's just a natural flow of games. They won't be on top forever, but it's undeniable that they became an industry leader into PS4. And as of right now, they're still holding that mantle from the PS4 generation, which is insane. Because if you would have went back to me in 2012, let's say, on the tail end of the PS3, and told me like, hey, in 10 years that PlayStation is going to be undeniably number one, I'd be like, there ain't a chance in hell. There ain't no chance. There's no way. Coming off of the Wii, what that sold, and the 360, what that sold, you would have told me the PlayStation would have beat them both. But they pulled it off, and I gotta give them a shout out to that. And it's so awesome that to this day, people with the backwards compatibility are regularly firing up PS4 games to play on their PS5s digitally, and there's not that many generations in the past where you can pull last gen games into the modern gen and they hold up amazingly. You can grab Elden Ring and play Ghost of Tsushima right after that, and they don't feel years apart at all. You know what I mean? And and you could pick any number of first party releases. You can go all the way back to Uncharted 4. And that's a number of years older, and that holds up beautifully. Sony Bend, going crazy with Days Gone. To this day, I think an incredibly underrated game that maybe had some optimization issues and a little bit stability issues, but overall, a handheld studio that during that generation made that crazy jump, I think is to be commended as well. And what Guerrilla became during the PS4 generation, going from a first-person shooter studio to Horizon, one of my favorite Western RPGs. That's another thing I think is important to note, is just the transformations that certain teams made during that generation as well. That what they were, 10 years ago versus what they are now. Naughty Dog was something, of course, in the tail end of the PS3 game generation, but what they've become during the PS4 generation, like Naughty Dog means something now. Back in the day, people like, there were Naughty Dog fans for sure. People were like, oh, new Naughty Dog game. Oh yeah, hell yeah, I'll check that out. But now when Naughty Dog's like, hey, we have an announcement coming out in a month, the industry freezes for a second, and people are like, wait, new Naughty Dog, and that. You have to thank the the PS4 generation for, because that was not the case in 2012, you know what I mean, or 2013, and the fact that fast forward to now, so many studios, both new and old, have gotten the chance to really flex what they're able to do, and then there's even vets that are in weird places like Media Molecule. Who knows what that's going to look like for them, but they had a very interesting kind of trajectory during that generation as well, where they kind of were AWOL for a bit. They didn't develop that. I think it was a Sumo Digital that did Little Big Planet 3. And so they kind of came back with Dreams on the tail end, which I think with time will turn into a bit of a cult classic. Like, I think the average consumer and many gamers themselves, myself included, are probably like never going to be really into Dreams, don't really get it. But I think that's like going to be a super sleeper hit one day. I really still believe that because of its engine making capabilities. That I feel like in 10 years there's going to be like, people are going to be fighting to get copies of Dreams. I really believe that, like, because I think Media Molecule, as weird as they are, and they make these decisions that I don't understand, I think there's something very special. And the fact that Sony kind of kept them around, like, shout out to y'all, because I would have 100% expected you guys to like disassemble them by now, but they haven't, which I think is a testament to Sony giving their teams the ability. The success allows them that level of flexibility, where there's not that desperation there, where it's like, hey, take your time, do your thing. We'll have the other teams, have something out. Insomnia going crazy, they'll have something, and I'm sure in 4 months as well, because they're just pumping them out there. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of this generation, and I look back at it very fondly. There's not many generations I can look back at almost uniformly positively. Like, there's not much I have too much negative to say about the PS4 generation, which is very rare.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree.
All right, so that was the show. We got just over an hour there, so not too bad. I thought it was gonna be a shorter one. But between this next show, this show and this next show, there's gonna be a major state of play, from what I understand. So we're gonna have even more Sony news, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit more movement on the Nintendo and Xbox fronts as well. So lots of stuff in the works right now, and we'll have more information for you guys in 2 weeks. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. This was the NeoVintage Podcast. I'm Jarrell, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope you guys enjoyed.
And we'll see you then. Bye.